When I first learned that tomatoes can be considered a fruit, my life has never been the same. And now, another huge event happened. Lacrimosa, the tomato devil, has finally arrived. And why argue which is which when we can all enjoy some spiciness instead? Anyway, in this video, I'm gonna showcase Lacrimosa and explain how she works, while at the same time, I'll also talk about some build options and share my first impressions about this sleepy fruit enjoyer in Neverness to Everness. Okay, so first things first, I made this video on an early access server. There's gonna be some text that didn't get fully translated to English, and you'll notice an insane amount of resources, but I'm just here to check out how Lacrimosa works, so final content is subject to change. But yeah, to start off, here's how I built her. She's using her signature The Last Rose. It's a pretty insane weapon because essentially the passive allows her to gain up to 60% critical damage, and actually she can immediately gain it when casting her skill. As you can see, I am sitting at 83% critical rate and 110% critical damage. But once I tap the skill and check the stats, now she has 170% critical damage. Not only that, this weapon also allows her to extend the enemy's broken state by 3 seconds. Honestly, the next best thing to her signature arc would be Fluff of Fleetness from the Battle Pass or Youthful Fantasy, but that weapon is better on Daffodil anyway. Or use Shiny Days or Real Music as a last resort. Alright, next we have the console. She's equipped with the Diabolos Force set, which is the best set on her obviously if you want to maximize her personal damage. The cartridge I'm using has critical rate main stat, she definitely needs it, and sadly I didn't get crit rate on a substat yet, but I'll work on that on my global account. Also, notice how she gains 10% chaos damage from type 3 module. So this is the layout I'm using. Basically I just fitted in 4 different type 3 modules, so that's 40% extra chaos damage, and then the other modules are there to enable the Diabolos Force set bonus. Lastly, I raised her abilities to level 10, and for now, she has no awakening abilities enabled, so she's A0. Okay, so with the build out of the way, what is Lacrimosa capable of? Well, first of all, when it comes to quality of life, she can turn into a bat, and you can actually fly around with her, which can be super useful. Not only that, her secondary life skill helps your team earn extra 15% fonts from the Pink Paws heist, so less grinding this grindy mode. Although, interestingly enough, the second tier only unlocks after you get her first dupe, but I'll talk about this a lot more when I get to her teams. Otherwise, she also has a bunch of cafe skills, but if you're like me and you just spam level 1-1 to dump the city stamina, so don't worry too much about her special tomato juice. Overall, she can fly and help you earn fonts faster from Pink Paws. Pretty useful unit for the roster. However, what about her combat capabilities? Well, first of all, Lacrimosa can dish out 5 basic attack string in either melee or ranged mode. On PC, you can swap between these modes by pressing G button, which will also deliver a small hit at first, but overall, I would say I prefer using her in ranged mode, especially when it comes to her special passive Nightmare. You see, Lacrimosa can build up these Nightmare stacks on enemies, shown here, and it's a 3-second DOT, so 3 ticks total from each Nightmare stack, but they can be stacked together up to 10 times, and with a fully buffed team, I was able to reach around 6,000 critical damage per tick, but it can probably go even higher easily. It's also interesting how some of her combos help maintain these Nightmare stacks. By default, you apply a bunch of it when performing basic hits, but there's neat ways to optimize it, like you can maintain them by just dash canceling and doing ranged attack twice, so B2 dash cancel, or in melee, her second hit sort of has this explode effect, which also helps in a way. Oh, and also, the last hit of either melee or ranged can be swap cancelled, which can be useful because their animations are quite long, and you can also chain in her skill, which I guess now is a good time to explain. So her skill is very unique because initially, it just does this white attack and applies 5 Nightmare stacks. However, by holding down attack button, you can aim at any enemy in the game, and when you see these cute bat wings, release the attack button. Now, Lacrimosa has just copied that enemy's ability and registered it to her very own Pokédex. That's right, Lacrimosa is a twisted Pokemon trainer. Sort of. When looking at this book in the abilities menu, you can actually set any enemy's ability that you've copied in the past, or just unset it and use base version of the skill. But it's not that amazing, and also, she can actually use her basic skill after triggering the monster skill, but only after she is about to do her 4th or 5th basic attack in either ranged or melee mode. Or in other words, let's say I just tapped her skill, one of the copied monster abilities deals some damage, then I start doing basic attacks, and around here, you can see I immediately unleash her skill again, but now it's the basic version thanks to her passive. So in a nutshell, she can unleash both her monster skill, which will not apply 5 nightmare stacks, but around 4th basic hit, she can then unleash the regular skill and apply those 5 nightmare stacks. Now, the big question is, which monster is the best one to copy? Well, I'll tell you this, it's a nightmare to figure out all of this early into the game. I would probably recommend using one of the 2 boss abilities shown here, or you can also just copy her own Tomato Devil ability. It's also really strong. Now, lastly, her ultimate is quite simple. It has 2 different animations, depending whether she's in melee or ranged mode, but overall, it deals essentially the same damage whichever mode she's in. And then the ultimate also applies 5 stacks of Nightmare. So yeah, all in all, she's a really cool tomato fighter. I love the fact you can copy any monster's ability. There's probably gonna be one that will be better than others, but at least in the meantime, you can fill out the Pokédex and mess around with all abilities at least once. Still, we also need to talk about her place in teams, so let's do that now. Okay, so Lacrimosa is a Chaos unit, the second Chaos unit in the game after Daffodil, and personally I think Chaos is the coolest attribute since it can enable Scorch, Nova, and Discord Esper cycles. And right now, I really like this team with Adler, Sakiri, and Haniel. Sakiri helps boost DOT damage, which I believe affects both Scorch and Nightmare damage ticks, then Adler can randomly help apply debuffs from Scorch, and Haniel can empower Nova. As for Lacrimosa's Esper enhancement, well, she empowers Discord, which now deals 400% damage when it gets triggered, but only when the enemy is in a broken state. So a bit of a weird condition, but if you can set up Discord fast enough when the enemy is broken, or trigger broken when the Discord is about to get applied, it's quite strong. Now, otherwise, you can also replace anyone here with Baisang. He does demand some field time, but his sub DPS is quite strong, or if you don't want to use Haniel, she can be replaced by Fadia, who also brings some tankiness for the team. I also like to bring Daffodil sometimes. She can be utilized in a team like this, and a huge focus is put on getting the enemy broken ASAP, which will result in some massive damage and overall feels super satisfying to pull off. Otherwise, you could also play her for fun in these Blossom teams with Hattori, because when she copies skills, you can actually trigger Lacrimosa's monster skill twice, which can be quite funny. Still, I do want to mention one super crucial detail about Lacrimosa, which you'll see every other guide maker talk about it. You see, by getting a dupe of Lacrimosa and enabling this Last Awakening ability, which I know it shows in Chinese here because of early access server, but the point is, when enabled, Lacrimosa essentially becomes a totally different character. You see, with this awakening power, when you use Lacrimosa's monster skill and immediately swap to a teammate who can help trigger one of Esper cycles that Lacrimosa can trigger, her Esper cycle ability immediately becomes available. So for example, I use Lacrimosa's monster skill, swap to Sakiri, and immediately swap back to Lacrimosa, who will trigger Scorch even if Sakiri didn't have her Esper gauge fully built. Or how about this? I use her monster skill right before she almost has a full Esper gauge, swap immediately to Sakiri, swap back and trigger Lacrimosa's support skill and apply Scorch, then her gauge becomes full now, and I can immediately swap from her to Haniel and apply Nova, which results in Discord as well. See how fast this can be achieved with just her first awakening? Really powerful, and quite the game-changing ability if you like to enable this quick swappy playstyle. And there's many different ways how you can experiment with her abilities this way. So yeah, you can build standard teams as usual with Lacrimosa, focusing on the big 3 Esper cycles. However, she basically becomes a second zero with that ability to trigger almost instantly one Esper cycle after another. So, what do I think about this Tomato girl? Well, let me share my opinion while I'm showcasing all of her alternate costumes. Okay, so honestly, she's quite good without any awakenings, but as you saw yourself, that first awakening more or less completely transforms how you play her. Esper cycles are quite potent in NTE, but luckily, at least for now, the endgame isn't that challenging. Literally, my buddy I Win to Lose showed how you can solo clear with Chi's final stage of Beyond the Rails. That doesn't mean it's totally fine. I personally would have preferred if that instant Esper cycle was baked into her actual kit, not locked behind an awakening power, but it is what it is. Besides that, yeah, she can also fly around and help with faster ping pause mode farming, so overall she's a really solid unit with a really powerful first dupe awakening, so I'll leave for you to decide if it's worth pursuing. As I said, there's no challenging content that demands Lacrimosa to be utilized, and personally, I will only get a single copy of her, and just focus on playing her as a hyper DPS. Anyway, hope you found the video useful, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and press like button on this video, otherwise I will tomato all over you.